What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, I do want to go over something once again regarding the summits. Now, I would say a lot of these things a lot of people are suggesting may end up happening in the future. Like, for example, that one summit to where we did have like all the classes locked to like, well, you can't use like your pro settings or even something like your part sets. And of course, on the flip side of that, you're most likely going to have the own issues that do end up showing up. Like, yeah, why am I going to grind for like parts if I can't even use them? Or like, why would I go after like the perfect build for my vehicle if I can't run it? So I would say like they're going to create their own issues when going after different ideas like that, but who knows, maybe in the future we might end up seeing something like this. And I would say many players are most likely looking for something to change with the summits to where maybe they can be separated, or like maybe they can end up making it so it's going to be a bit more balanced in some way. Now, I would say one of the good ways to do this, though, is we do know in every single summit, even since the Crew 2 before, we did indeed have 3 different skills in each summit, so they might range from like a speed trap to like a slalom. We even have like an escape, a bullseye, or like one of the buoy smashing. On top of that, though, we also have like a low altitude and some of the aerobatic type of skills as well. Now, my big question here, though, is imagine if we had something to where each skill is going to be locked behind a certain vehicle, or even if one of the skills is going to be locked behind a certain, like, I guess you could say class for that matter. Now, I do know to some players this is most likely going to sound a bit insane. Like, Blocked, what are you talking about, dude? We can't have, like, regular vehicles being in, like, a speed trap or something like that. That would make no sense. Now, to a certain extent, I would say this is probably going to be fairly true. Like, yeah, we're going to do a speed trap, so many players are most likely going to run a drag car. I mean, what is the point of running a vehicle that can do 190 miles an hour on it, while the drag cars can hit like 430 miles an hour like by themselves? So at least if you are running one of those solo, it's probably going to be a lot quicker that way. The only issue with this though is if the vehicle, like let's say you had to use a street tier 1 in a speed trap, yeah, that's probably going to be insanely good for like balancing the speed trap out. The only issue with that is everybody's going to do 180 to 190 miles an hour, so it's most likely going to raise some issues of the score being like exactly the same on each one, and you're probably going to have like 100,000 players or something having the exact same score, which then of course on the flip side of that is going to add on to the other skills and the events basically having, a better score in those to increase like your overall score in platinum. So I would say certain ones might end up being an issue. Now, if we did move over, though, and look at something like maybe a slalom, this could honestly work. Like, imagine one of the weeks showing up, like, yeah, you have to use a motocross bike, or, like, you might end up happening to, like, maybe use a demolition derby car. And then let's say the slalom is going to be locked behind, like, a motocross bike. A lot of players are most likely not even going to have, like, the said part set for it. Like, how many people actually have a score breaker for a motocross bike? I would probably say it's going to be a fairly low number. I mean, a lot of people probably don't even want to use them. I don't blame you there. Not a very fun class to use at the moment. Also because the motocross bikes feel like a refrigerator. But even though they might not feel like an actual motocross bike, it would definitely make the slaloms a lot more interesting every single week if one of the classes are going to be locked, or like even a specific vehicle itself, instead of everybody always running an Alpha GP vehicle. Like, I do understand, guys, I know they're going to be quick and they obviously handle really well, but my goodness, it really does not give a point to use anything else in them, and I would say the same thing can most likely go for a speed trap. Now, if you are wondering, I also have something I do want to input for an escape. Now, the only issue with this, though, is the main circle thing does obviously close pretty dang quick. And the issue with that, though, is yeah, you're probably going to want to use like the fastest car you possibly can on a set escape. The problem with that, though, is if you are running only hypercars, everyone's going to use the best hypercar. Not going to name any vehicles here. Looking at you, Bugatti. I would say a lot of players are probably going to run the exact same car to get the highest score. But imagine if the escape was going to be locked to like a certain vehicle itself. Like, what if you had to use like a Lamborghini Countach that week, or like even maybe a McLaren? I would say it's probably going to make it that much more interesting if you could only use that vehicle in them. Now, on the flip side of that, though, they can maybe adjust the circle just slightly. Like, I do know it's going to close at a certain amount of time. That way you have to use, like, a faster car. But maybe if it's going to be locked to a certain vehicle, maybe they can, like, slow the circle down. Who knew? But can we all agree, though, that doing something like that to an escape or even, like, a speed trap is probably going to make them that much more interesting. And of course, on the flip side, you can most likely have a better time in them because you're not going to be forced to use the exact same vehicle class, or like even the exact same vehicle for that matter. Now, one of the biggest topics with the skills is of course going to be the traffic. My goodness, guys, I really would say the traffic is awful. Now, I did make some videos about this stuff in the past, like going over the best way to do an escape. And I would say the biggest factor in most of these skills is the traffic. Like, not even going to lie here, even in a speed trap or like a slalom itself. At this point, though, I would say basically everybody is going to agree that the traffic is a nightmare. Now, I am planning on doing a separate video going over this and how I think some changes could end up making it better. I would say that's probably going to be one of the biggest issues with the skills right now. I would also like to know what you guys think about the ideas for the skills being locked to certain vehicles or even certain classes in the comments below.